It was in August 2008 that one of the greatest mysteries on disappearing people happened in this very spot. Mike Hearon, 51-year-old local man. He has a house in Maryville where I live. It's about 20 miles or so from here. And he also has a generational family farmhouse right in Happy Valley on this road area, Bell Branch Road. Now, what happened to him is particularly intriguing. He had no known problems, enjoyed his life, and then suddenly, one day, boom, on the 23rd of August 2008, he vanished. His car was found, and in his car was his wallet, his keys. Why would he leave them behind if he was vanishing of his own volition? More importantly, he had an ATV which was left parked up in, according to his sons, an unusual spot, a place he wouldn't go before, and the kill switch was on. Now, there was a massive manhunt for Mike Hearon. Hundreds of people were involved, cadaver dogs looking for dead bodies, and no trace of him was ever found. Now, his sons suspect foul play, and I understand why, but let's go through the possibilities. If it were foul play, you would expect to see some evidence of it. And why would they be after him? He had no enemies. He wasn't like he was involved in any nefarious activities. Some people have suggested ginseng farmers, but why? This isn't a place that lends itself to that. Maybe wild animals. There's certainly, we're on the edge of the national park here, and a bear is always a possibility. But there would have been, and there's no other polite way of putting it, some debris if an animal had taken him. And there was nothing, as I mentioned, nothing. Now, we're never going to really know what happened to Mike Hearon, but I want to put this possibility to you. Mike Hearon saw something in this area that caused him to chase it. For example, in that ATV, that's why he left everything behind him. He had his blood rushing. In that heat of the moment, he chased something, and that something did not like him chasing it, and it took him, and that's why he vanished.
The first time that I went out to do a little bit of the history of the Mike Hearon disappearance, I was also in the area to see some about the Kirkland Shaw feud, and Bayes Shaw, who was a bushwhacker in the Civil War. And the way that I researched that, I'll search Find a Grave and find their last names, and I'll usually be able to see how many of the family are buried in a certain area, kind of like Hatfield and McCoy feud stuff. And I figured, why not look into Mike Hearon and his family? I found the earliest grave of a Hearon in Blount County dates back to the 1870s, and of 93 Herons buried in Blount County, 40 of them are buried in the Happy Valley Cemetery. And I also found out in 2022, Verl Hearon, Mike Hearon's father, passed away, and he was the pastor of the Happy Valley Baptist Church. So with 40 Herons buried there, they were very well tied to the community in a settlement that really began right after the Civil War. And even more than that, a lot of the Whiteheads are buried in this local community as well. You had Grady Whitehead's involvement with it. I thought it was very interesting that they were about as tied to the community as the community was tied to the Smokies. And in order to do my little video that I was doing on the history of Bayes Shaw, you have to come up over the gap of Dragon's Tail. And there are dozens of switchbacks over only a couple of miles. And I figured, after seeing that his father was a pastor and that they were tied to the community, and the Whiteheads and the Herons were very well close with each other for generations, I figured that when all of the theories discussing, oh, maybe he came across a still or a ginseng hunting operation or some Dixie Mafia marijuana something, Everybody in this valley has known each other, and they've been closely tied to each other going back to right after the Civil War. And for there to be a high adventure Dragon's Neck with dozens of switchbacks only miles away, and most people who go there, they are from out of town. You also go through that area to get to Nantahala, which is a very big spot in the Smokies. There's a lot of outsiders coming in. And if Mike Hearon left his wallet in his truck, left his driver's license right there, the doors were unlocked, I figure he probably left on his ATV to go for an hour or so ride. Maybe he was clipped by somebody, an ATV driver, someone that was racing through the switchbacks, having a little bit too much fun. And now they figure they're out of town. They might want to hide Mike's body and drive his ATV back to the nearest place around, which would be kind of the remote loop on Happy Valley Loop, which wasn't far at all from Mike Heron's house. It's only a half a mile or so away. So it's just interesting to see how close the family was to the community.
One thing I've learnt from today is that this place is vast, but also very enigmatic. I think I'm going to need to get a team together.
I received an intriguing phone call from Adam Davies. He is starting an investigation into the disappearances of two individuals from the Wears Valley, Tennessee area, and he is requesting assistance. These two individuals disappeared in two significantly different time frames, but the circumstances surrounding their disappearances are eerily similar. After meeting with Adam, I have determined that this is a worthwhile project, but knowing that missing people is not my strongest point, I have decided to enlist the help of Natalie Smearman, who has a wealth of knowledge and a skill set that I am certain will fill in the gaps.
Hi, I'm Natalie Smearman, and I am originally from West Virginia, live in Florida now. Been interested in Bigfoot and the cryptozoology environment for quite some time. I am not an expert by any means, but I embrace citizen science and going out and observing and collecting information and sharing it with others that are like-minded. And even though I'm 52 and a mom, I'm still getting out into the environment and loving every minute of it and really embracing nature and others who love nature too. I go to conferences, I meet with other people that have similar interests and really enjoy every moment of it.
While Adam and Natalie run down the details of the disappearances, I'm going to meet up with a group and test out the veracity of Adam's claims. Scott and Sheila Granger own and operate a one-of-a-kind adventure business. tucked away in the wilds of North Georgia, just within 50 miles of where Mike Hearon and Dennis Martin mysteriously vanished. By day, they teach guests the art of fly fishing, offering a peaceful chance to catch dinner from the mountain streams. But when the sun sets, the experience takes a thrilling turn. Guided night expeditions into the deep woods in search of something far more elusive. With a bit of luck and maybe a dash of courage, you just might catch a glimpse of Bigfoot. After a brief safety meeting, our group heads out into the forest, where we eventually come across this structure. We thoroughly investigate the anomalies around the structure, and I form an opinion of its construction. Immediately beyond the structure, we find something that solidified my opinion as to who, or what, made it. At the end of the expedition, the entire team sat down to discuss what happened when we left the structure and headed out to another location. What crossed in front of our trucks was something out of legend. Cameras were not rolling at the time, but for an instant, we caught a glimpse of an enormous Bigfoot that left the field crew in disbelief and tracks that measured over 17 inches. It would seem that Adam's theory of what could have happened to Mike Hearon may be possible.
Incident report, Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Report taken June 14th, 1969, 8:28 p.m. Dennis disappeared while on an outing with family members in the Spence Field area. During the following 2-week period, thousands of man-hours were exhausted in an effort to find the boy. As of this date, he has not been located. Dennis, his father, grandfather, Clyde Martin, and older brother, Douglas, 9 years, had come to the Spence Field after spending the previous night at the Russell Field Shelter, 2 miles west of Spence Field. They camped in the shelter cabin at the west end of the field for the night. Several adults of this group, including William Martin, were sitting in a grassy spot to the southwest of the Anthony Creek trailhead, watching Dennis, Douglas, and 2 other boys of the group, all playing near the top and parallel to the Anthony Creek trailhead. According to Douglas Harton, the boys decided to sneak up and surprise the adults. Douglas and the 2 other boys went south and then west and came upon the adults, while Dennis went northwest and intended to come upon the adults from a north to south direction. The time the boys parted was the last time Dennis was seen. After 3 to 5 minutes, Mr. Martin became worried and started to search for his son. Having no luck, he returned to Spence Field, thinking Dennis had returned. He then searched for another 2.5 miles and still found nothing. That is when they decided to contact the authorities. Cades Cove Sub-District Ranger Larry K. Nielsen notified the dispatcher at park headquarters at 8:28 p.m. The dispatcher turned on the radio tape recorder and notified Chief Ranger Snitten and North District Ranger Morris. Heavy rainstorms and thunder showers moved in around dark and greatly hampered search activity. Precipitation was estimated to be 2.5 inches or more in the Spence Field area. All streams were high and turbulent. Rangers and family members searched the immediate area around where Dennis was last seen for the rest of the night. The chief ranger set up the following plans for morning. 1 crew of 30 men with 5 leaders, 10 crews of 2 to 4 men with 10 leaders, set up a camp at Spence Field, obtain helicopter if possible. The chief ranger was successful in organizing the largest search and rescue operation to date in the Smoky Mountains National Park. Multiple aircraft and approximately 2,000 people joined the search from dozens of agencies in the area. Even our military special forces joined in the search for the missing boy. The effort to find young Martin was colossal, even by today's standards, and yet not a trace of the boy was found. The Martins eventually grew suspicious that their son could have been kidnapped by certain individuals, but initially, no evidence of a kidnapping was found. The authorities, particularly the FBI, noted that the Martins simply did not want to accept that their son would never be accounted for. And thus, having no evidence in order to proceed further, the search was called off on June 29, 1969. The operation was closed down at the Spence Field at 6 p.m. Ranger Wiggins secured the area, saw that all searchers were down, and brought the last jeep down. The search for Dennis Martin became the largest in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park history, mobilizing roughly 2,000 people across a 56 square mile area, including U.S. military units, park rangers, and other federal and local agencies. Despite extensive coordination between the National Park Service, Special Forces teams, and numerous volunteer groups, no trace of the boy was ever found.
All right, we're here today in the Smoky Mountains to talk about the missing person cases over the years. And one case in particular that we're talking about is the Dennis Martin case. And South Force.
Yes.
We're going to use that as your name because you want to remain anonymous.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I'd like to hear a little bit more from your perspective because you and your family have lived in the area. You're a local. And so can you tell me a little bit about what you know about the case?
Okay. Yeah, we have to start backing up a few years. Let's go back to when the park was first being established back in the 30s and stuff, and go back to probably my great-grandfather and some of my uncles. They lived in the shadow of the Smoky Mountains their whole lives. They've never moved away, never moved out of the mountains or anything. So, and they were avid hunters, and everybody in this little community, they all got along and they all hunt together and done stuff. And the story goes that they were approached by some men one time who offered them cash money if they would go up into the mountains and hunt and kill these things.
What things?
These things were what we would refer to as feral people. Now that's what me and you would refer to them to. They refer to them as boogers and other things because they really had no explanation for what they were. They knew these things were around. They would take people's pigs, chickens, hogs. They'd been known to even chase some of their children. They viewed them as a nuisance. They didn't view these things as anything paranormal at all. They just viewed them as a nuisance.
And who were these men that approached your family members?
They felt that these were government men, that they were tied into the government because they wanted these things thinned out of the park because they knew the park was going to be established and it was going to be something big one day. It was going to be a really big thing. And they knew in order for that to happen that these feral men had to be thinned out. They had to be thinned down because that was going to be a problem. That was going to be a huge problem. So they approached them and asked them if so many times a year we couldn't have a hunt for these things. They approached them and said, you know, they're a nuisance to you. They're going to be a nuisance to us. They're going to be a nuisance to the visitors who come here. Let's just keep this quiet and let's just go thin these things out. And we'll do this 2 or 3 times a year. And we'll pay you cash for every one that you can produce, that you can bring to us.
Wow.
And this went on for years, from I guess my great-grandfather to my grandfather to my uncles. They all had a hand in helping bring these things in. And that happened way on up into probably the early 60s, I'm going to say, these hunts.
Okay.
Because by this time the park was becoming very well established. Now we start getting a lot of visitors in here, you know. You can't really be tromping around in the park with rifles, high-powered rifles, and we've got visitors out here now. That's not a good look. So they stopped. They stopped doing this in the early 60s. You know, they told my uncles, you know, we're gonna have to stop now, this is all. Even though these things were still out there, you know, there were more of them than what they actually thought. And
so what did your uncles say to these men that came in at the time that they said to stop?
if you do not continue somehow to figure out a way to extinguish these things, one day you will pay for it. There will be somebody somewhere that these things will take, and then you'll have a problem.
Well, in the Dennis Martin case, he went missing in June of 1969.
Yes, probably about 10, 9, 8 years later, somewhere in there, he went missing. He went missing from Spence Field. He sure did. He just like disappeared. In the bat of an eye, he was gone.
And so what was said after that? Did your uncle suspect it was a feral man like they had taken care of years prior?
Yes. He actually talked to some park rangers. The people in the community around here were tight-knit and close, and everybody knew everybody. And my uncle approached some of the park rangers and said, you know, is this what we think happened, you know, with Dennis? And they said, we believe so. We believe that 100% that that's what happened. You know, we have not found anything at this point in time to prove that. So you start inducing it down, and they come to the conclusion that yes, they think that was one of these wild men.
And
So-
nobody ever said anything about that to Dennis Martin's family,
No,
or did they?
not that I know of, they did. I don't really think that's something that they wanted to approach his family with.
Now, the FBI did get involved, from my understanding, correct?
The FBI stood along the sidelines and watched for some reason. They didn't get involved because their excuse was if there's no proof of a kidnapping, then they can't be involved. But there was no investigation either, so I don't understand how do you get proof of a kidnapping if you're not willing to investigate yourself.
Goodness. So with the Dennis Martin case, they never found anything conclusive.
The case will go unsolved. It will never be solved.
Are there other circumstances surrounding these feral humans, or other circumstances that you have encountered yourself?
Not that I have encountered particularly myself. I have had some friends of mine come back with some stories. The feral men, you're not really going to find them or see them on the trails as far as that goes. If you come to the mountains and you stay on the trails, what I always tell everybody, you'll be fine.
After meeting with South Force and the Dennis Martin case, I wanted to look into the FBI files a little bit further. He had mentioned that they did do an investigation, but it wasn't thorough. I went to the FBI vault files and found this on their website. There were 133 pages of their entire file, but most was redacted. We did locate some information that was not in the original information that was released to the community. They did note that Dennis Martin had a low learning ability and was placed in a special school 1 year prior to his disappearance. It was also noted that he was wearing a red shirt and had a larger head than a normal child his age. They noted that William Martin, Dennis's father, called the FBI every single day for months post his disappearance, as any parent would. The FBI was on site, but never really investigated the actual site of his disappearance. There were many people that came out to search for Dennis. There were many people that called in with tips that just led to a dead end. And after many months, the case went cold. In 1978, the FBI received a tip from an inmate in a Tennessee prison saying that another inmate trafficked Dennis Martin. From 1969, it took the FBI 2 years to investigate this to come out with nothing. And in 1981, they received another tip from someone anonymous saying that Dennis Martin is alive and living in Georgia, that he is working there, and gave the FBI the information to the employer. The FBI followed up in January of 1981 and in March of 1981 to conclude that Dennis Martin was abducted by a family member, and he is there in Georgia working and living. At the very bottom of the last page, it states in writing, in a handwritten note from May of 1981, that no further investigation is needed. The case was then closed. There is no proof that the FBI did go to Georgia to investigate or to speak to anyone, which makes me believe that there's more to this story.
On June 13th, 1969, Dennis Martin and his family were camping in a remote area of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park called Spence Field. Around 4:30 p.m., Dennis and his friends decide that they are going to hide behind some brush and scare the adults that are approaching on the trail. That is when Dennis seemingly vanished without a trace, never to be seen again. I know some people who may be able to assist in finding out what happened to Dennis Martin. I know 2 remote viewers who have been highly successful in their efforts. The first was able to view my home and accurately describe areas that she had never seen before. And the second is well known for her accuracy in the cryptid field.
My name is Tilly Treadwell. I was born and raised in Lake Mary, Florida, and I am a former member of the Catholic exorcist team. Beyond that, I am what you could say is called an intermediary. An intermediary is a type of bridge, perhaps, between the human world and the other worlds that are out there. There are some intermediaries who work with human spirits, but my specialty is of the non-human variety. As an intermediary, the abilities really depend upon the individual case. So with some cases that I've worked, more of the remote viewing aspects and collaboration with people like the Jinn or the Land Guardians is necessary. In other cases, though, it might be more about just working with people, getting a grasp on personalities, and then seeing what type of information I can gather from a non-human contact beyond the veil regarding that person's journey or soul or past to facilitate healing. I have used many of my abilities to help people, and this was why I had originally gotten into tarot card reading, energy healing, and then eventually working paranormal cases with the Catholic Church. And now I focus my abilities on education.
Tilly has allowed us to view her method of contacting beings from other realms. What is notably interesting is that during this segment, the audio becomes extremely distorted. Was it merely equipment failure, were something totally different.
So in some timelines, apparently, it was a false confession, and in other timelines, this person was involved in a case of closed human trafficking of this child. Parents were not as careful as they said, however, in both of those cases. And of course, they've got reason to say that they were extremely careful. I'm not saying that they necessarily did it on purpose. They're also alleging that evidence was dismissed by the people at the top of the investigation, and that there was a flaw in collection. There's something to do with a shoe or a sock that was dismissed, but I can't see what exactly. And then they showed me there was a cabin somewhere in the area that was near a stream and a small rock field, and then further out there was apparently some type of boulder field, but there was more evidence there at some point. Specifically, there was a pair of shorts and something to do with the rocks in the area.
Do you think his body is still in that area, or was it taken somewhere else for traffic?
I'm seeing transportation, but I don't know where.
I'm Jessica Jones. I'm a remote viewer. Basically, I'm a Bigfoot field researcher that learned remote viewing with my team, and I've been training this for over a decade now. I do a lot of remote viewing. It's my favorite hobby. I don't claim to be an expert, but I'm pretty good at it. I need to explain what remote viewing is. It's actually locating a blind target. We're not aware of what the target is. I am given a set of coordinates. So 8 numbers is all I'm given. I've been trained to take those numbers that have been assigned to a target, and I don't know what that target is, but I'm given those numbers. And so when my tasker gives me those numbers, I have a process where I sit down with a stack of white printer paper and some pens, and I write those numbers down, and I go through a process in stages, page after page after page of data I'm getting from those numbers. It just kind of, as I write those numbers down, I do some automatic writing, and then it's like the aperture opens up and all this data starts flooding in, and I write it down in charts. And that's how I do remote viewing. By the end of my session, I've got pages of data, and I still don't know what that target is, but I can kind of give you a good idea what I think that target is. So I was given the target of Dennis Martin. What happened to him? His disappearance. That was my target. And I got a lot of really interesting data on this because, see, I'm given these targets. I don't know what they are. It's just a set of numbers. I think the data is pretty compelling in this one. I knew immediately when I got this target that I was in the woods. Okay, I was getting, I actually wrote down Smokey the Bear. Okay, I wrote down Smokey the Bear, and I saw a big sign that said, "Don't feed the bears." I heard only you can prevent forest fires. Okay, so that was some of my what we call analytic overlay, but I was definitely seeing with my sensory data. What I'm doing is I'm getting a lot of sensory data, and I saw the sign, something that was like metal, wood, plate. I was outdoors. I was seeing fog, rain, moisture, something that was very slick. I was starting to feel nauseated when I got to this target and sad. But I heard only you can prevent forest fires, and then I wrote down mistake, wrong move, a turn of events, the deluge, and mist. And then I started getting data that it pertained to someone who was missing. So I wrote missing person. Some of my sensory data was hurting, painful, stolen, panicked, dishonest, crying, upset, confused, and a knife. And I started, that was one of my tangibles with my data, and I wrote knife, taken at knife point. And then under that, I wrote snuffed out. And then I wrote ransom. I picked up on a person because I was getting the missing person data, and I wrote missing person. So I did what we do in remote viewing. It's called deep mind probe. And so if I hone in on an individual, even sometimes if I'm remote viewing something that might even be like a Bigfoot or something. I mean, I do even cryptid remote viewing targets. But I'm able to do something where I tune into that person's thoughts, basically. And they can either be alive or deceased. And I did a deep mind probe on this person. Just remember, I don't know what I'm remote viewing still. I'm just picking up on a person. And so what I did was that in the deep mind probe, I asked the question. I said, what happened to you? Because this is around the time that I was getting the knife point data where somebody was taken at knife point. And these are the words that I wrote down. Grabbed, taken, underneath, walls, merged, plastered, city, and sold. So then on my next page of data, I wrote down,
Didn't find Dennis Martin. I asked Jessica what she thought ultimately happened to him.
that he was kidnapped and died.
Tonight, Natalie, I'd like to take you to an area where I and other researchers have experienced some anomalous phenomenon. I don't want to say exactly what might happen. I can't guarantee it. Maybe nothing. But I think it's important we go and check it out while you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. And tomorrow morning, I'd love to investigate these two churches where there's a ton of paranormal and spiritual activity. And so we should be done around noon.
Well, that's perfect because that gives us time to go to Happy Valley and have a look in the area, roughly speaking, where Mike Hearon disappeared, and maybe to do some investigations at night before the storm comes in, if we have time.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right, shall we
All
go?
right, let's go.
Adam and Natalie begin their investigation at one of Adam's research areas. This area is filled with black bears, deer, and the occasional mountain lion. Mike Hearon disappeared just to the west of their location, and Dennis Martin was last seen just to the east at Spence Field. This should get Natalie's feet wet conducting night investigations.
We're going down the trail and we saw an orb. I've never seen an orb before. And I saw it in the distance. I hope I picked it up on my phone. and we went towards it, and it just disappeared immediately.
And how did you feel when you saw the orb?
It was exciting and also a bit unreal.
So, how do you feel now about your first investigation with me in the Smoky?
Oh, it's amazing. I am so happy that I got to experience this. And even though I had that area back there where I felt horrible, I was so excited that I actually had the experience to feel that. Because I had only heard that about those feelings, but I've never experienced it until now. So I am so thankful.
Are you good to do more?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, then let's go.
All right, let's go. Adam,
Oh, hi, Natalie.
great to see you.
Oh, thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Now, one of the reasons that I picked this spot for us to meet up is I've been researching some of the local legends. You can see over here on this side of the parkway, it leads all the way to Maryville. But in this very spot, a really strange incident happened. Now, the person who told me about it is so scared of repercussions, she doesn't want to even reveal her name.
Oh, wow.
But she came up here, you can see it's a beautiful spot,
Yeah.
and she was meditating. It was about 7:30 p.m, dusk in summer, and from these woods here, 12 figures in hoods, black hoods and black cloaks came out of the woods chanting, and she was terrified.
Oh my.
Now, what sort of cult is that?
That's crazy.
Yeah, and you know, and they were unperturbed. They came straight out of these woods and they walked in a circle and was chanting.
I would have been terrified.
She was terrified. That's why she won't even give me her name.
Oh, God.
And one of the other local people who will give me a name for the purposes of the film, Monica Tubb, she was saying that she saw, and there's a lot of stories about an area called Nebo Mountain, where there's been a lot of stories of criminal activity, of people starting fires and roadblocks for the police to come in to avoid the police. So what you've got is a palpable sense of fear of some of the individuals around here.
Wow. Well, it's funny you say that. I was doing some investigating and I interviewed a gentleman by the name of South Force. And he was talking about him and his family had already have a history of these feral men that are in the area. And his family was hired by what they feel are government employees to go out and kill these feral men and bring them.
Really?
Yeah. It started about 1930 and ended about 1962. And he talked about the FBI not wanting to get involved in some of the disappearances, especially with the Dennis Martin case. And they kind of were hands off. And their reports on the FBI vault files that were released in 2022 really were redacted, not a lot of information, and a lot of dead ends. So this is very interesting.
Now that is, I mean, to add to that point, obviously in '69, one of the stories was that a feral person have snatched Dennis Martin? Could a guy have snatched them? And there was one of those witnesses that said he saw a figure that was wearing skins with what appeared to be something over his shoulder, and that thing was screaming.
Right, and also that report showed that whatever it was holding was wearing a red shirt, and Dennis Martin was wearing a red shirt when he disappeared.
Perfect. Well, given the fact that there's some physical evidence that we need to find here if we possibly can, I think the best thing we can do is really explore and get out there into the woods and see if we can solve some of the mysteries to our satisfaction. What do you think?
I agree. Let's go.
Okay.
Awesome.
This is the place. I thought there might be some sort of supernatural activity, some sort of thing drawing me into this place above all places. I've got chills. But I want to see if you get the same vibe as me in this same place.
Okay.
So have a look around and see what we feel.
Yeah.
being drawn over here.
Really?
Over here. There's something here.
Now,
There's something.
what do you feel?
I feel very cold. And I feel tired as though my headings.
Now, genuinely, Natalie, that is the place that I felt alive. I felt the strange that corner. That very corner is the place that I was drawn to. But as you see, everyone influenced you.
Yeah.
But you know, if you could be influenced, I think you might be drawn up to the front.
Right.
But why the corner? That's the same place.
It was drawing me over here. There's something in this area, even up in there where that hole is into the eye, this whole section, there's something not right.
You know, when you get there, do you feel cold?
I feel very, very cold. And even though it's cold outside and in the middle here when we were sitting there, I wasn't as cold. Back here I have the chills. I'm gonna do a recording and see if we can get
Yeah, let's do that.
I'm Natalie. My friend Hearon, we're here. Just to take a look around. We're being very respectful and very mindful of your space. Can you let us know if you're here? What is your name? Did you live and die in this area? Did you have a bad experience here? Do you like it when people come in to look around? What do you think about people writing on the walls? Do you appreciate that, or do you feel that that's disrespectful?
Good, like that.
I'm Natalie. This is my friend Hearon. We're here. Just to take a look around. We're being very respectful and very mindful of your space. Can you let us know if you're here? What is your name? Did you live and die in this area? Did you have a bad experience here? Do you like it when people come in to look around? What do you think about people writing on the walls? Do you appreciate that, or do you feel that that's disrespectful?
You hear that? It's not like it, isn't it? Right now, yeah, very clear. Look, that's interesting. You know what I think we should do? We get an opportunity, we should come back and do an investigation.
Yeah, storm's moving in, so we got to
Yeah, that's good. That we do have to leave. We should definitely come back because pinpointing the exact spot I did, and you just got a very clear knock on.
Yeah,
It's fascinating. I was just really.
that's amazing.
All right, let's go before it's still mixed in. All right, back. Do an investigation.
Adam and Natalie meet up with the rest of the crew, and we move on to where Mike Hearon disappeared. As the day ends, the sun gives us one final peek of just how enigmatic these mountains really are.
Natalie, this area is right next door to the place where Mike Hearon disappeared. In fact, his farm just backs onto those woods at the back here. And I feel like if you're okay with it, we should explore these forests and set up a camp for tonight.
As the team heads deep into the woods, the storm Adam was worried about back at the church appears to be arriving earlier and stronger than expected. Adam and Natalie get settled in and start setting out equipment. As the light quickly fades, we switch our cameras over to night vision.
There it is. Yeah, very quick, very quick. Like chin. Pan towards. Yeah, keep going. Now, Jim, look at me and where I am. All right. And now the light was flickering right over directly where I on the other side of that bank behind those trees. Okay, so where you see the light patch, that's where there was a very clear flicker of light. Come forward up a little bit. Come forward up, then. And then just film in the. Yeah, there. That's that.
Gotcha.
You saw it like that. Yeah, I saw it. I saw it right after you said that.
What are you? Oh, it's gone. What? There was a glow up there. And then, yes, there was. Right where I'm pointing. There was a glow and it just went to the left.
Inverting the color field and applying a filter, we are better able to see what the camera crew caught. When we slow it down, you can see something was briefly there and then vanishes. But whatever the phenomena was, it was just getting started.
Shh. Did you hear that? What was it? Was that metal? It's closer. What is it?
So did you hear that horse?
Yeah, what'd you think?
It sounded like knocks, but it sounded like metal.
That's amazing. There's a lot of wind here and a storm is coming, but we can hear a cricket.
Yeah.
But it was a definite metallic clang,
It was definite.
and it feels like it's getting nearer.
Yeah, it started out, it was 3, then waited, and then there was 2, and then within a few seconds it was another 2, but it sounds like it's getting closer and closer.
So how do you feel about just going a little bit in?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna try a whistle again.
Okay.
I just saw a flash. It was over there. It was quick and bright and was definitely interesting. I want to hear that metallic clang again. I wonder if there is a connection with the lights.
So we heard the metal knocking, the 3, and then later there was 2, then 2. And then we start seeing orbs within 10, 20 minutes. And the orbs we've seen all around us. They were white. One was over there that was blue. We've seen red ones, and they flash, and they're sporadic all around us. And we heard walking down here, but we caught absolutely nothing on the Thurn.
So how do you feel about this place now, and how are you feeling generally?
It's odd.
As the powerful storm approaches, high winds threaten the safety of our crew. I decide to call off the investigation and try again for another day.
Yeah. That was a big one.
We exit the woods just as things started to fall all around us. Here's the first of 3 trees that we had to remove before we could make it back to our hotel. The next morning, we awoke to conditions that were not conducive for furthering our investigations. But what we had experienced reminded me of another investigation where we documented a similar phenomena.
Because it's moving about to different places.
Hmm.
I mean, you could say is that a light thing in the distance, but it's in different spots.
Yeah.
There, I've got it now. Got it now. You got it?
Yeah.
It's difficult to say. I've got it very clearly.
It's moving now.
Yeah, it's moving. Oh, yeah, you look, it's moving around.
Yeah.
Oh, shit, look, there's another one.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really clear now.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a few.
Yeah, it's kind of like moving this way.
Yeah, it's moving. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Look, there's 3. And they're dancing about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're dancing about.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Janice.
Okay.
Janice just stand directly over my shoulder.
I'm going to use you as
Yeah. Oh, that's it.
mount.
Yeah. Yeah, there, just...
Yeah. That's it. Look at that. Wow. Look at that.
Because I are blind.
Won't be able to see.
Oh my gosh. Keep rolling. Oh my gosh. Oh, look, Greg, can you see that?
No.
Oh, there's several moving around. I can see it moving down.
Yeah, I saw one.
There's 2. There's 2 now, like greeny colour things.
Yeah.
And they're moving down and they're coming towards us.
Yeah. I saw one of them moving towards us.
One of them's moving nearer. One of them stopped. One of them's getting nearer.
Yeah.
Oh, it's getting nearer. Can you see it now? Oh, it's getting nearer and nearer.
Hello.
Oh. Hey.
Hello.
Towards us.
Oh, I saw one.
Yeah, it's very bright now.
Yeah.
It's moving towards the direction of voices, so keep talking.
Hello.
I can't say it's definitely a response to us, but it's certainly coming towards us.
Yeah, it's coming towards us. Hello.
That is cool. Look how close it's getting. Oh, I hope you guys get this on camera. Whatever it is.
Janice will be.
Janice will get it. Good.
Yeah, I've got one right now.
Sweet, good. Yeah, I can see one right now. I'm right in front of it. Very clearly.
And I can see it on my camera. Oh, I see it going up. Okay, yeah, I got it on this. I had to turn that cube thing off, like you said.
Oh, it's going away. It's coming in.
Yeah, I see it. I do see it.
You got it?
Yes, I do have it.
Okay, brilliant. I'm so glad.
I got it. You can...
Where I am,
I see it now.
You can stay on my shoulder.
Yeah. And it is a ball, and it's moving just like he said. I got it on film.
Look at that.
Uh-huh.
Sweet.
Wow.
I'm so glad we did this. This is
we got it.
This is worth it.
Now, so what is it, right? We see this all the time.
We see this pretty good.
Yeah, we do.
I don't know what that is, but it's so interesting. It's so interesting.
Do you see it through the camera?
It's stopping now. It's fading
Yeah,
away.
I do, but it's
fading away.
I still have it on here.
Still there though.
Yeah,
There it is.
it's moving.
There were 3 before though.
I only had this one.
But well, at least
And
you've
it's
got
still
that
on
one.
it right
At least
now.
You've got that one.
Oh, it's bright now. And it just, it's moving.
Human beings though, there's Bigfoot activity over here.
I'm so glad you recorded it.
Yeah, oh, I got it. Promise you.
Brilliant.
And it's still recording.
I mean, we don't know what it means.
And it's really high up in the tree on this one.
To see.
You want
I've
to see
wanted
it,
to
Brent?
one of those for a very long time.
Look in there. Do you see it? It's just one.
Yeah, I see it.
There was 3.
I only have one.
I'm sorry you can't see it, but you'll see it on the playback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it on that.
You see it on that? You just seen it? Okay, good.
I only get glimpses of it every once in a while.
I can see it real clear where I am still.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Keep your eyes on it. I've seen them all the time.
Well, I saw 3 and they were dancing around and moving, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wasn't quite sure. I'll say this to camera. I wasn't quite sure whether it, I mean, and I think it's important, I wasn't quite sure whether, when I saw that light, whether it was something that might be artificially generated or not. But then I did see 3 of them, and they're moving around and dancing around. Now, I've never seen anything like that before. We can speculate what it might be. Sometimes people will say, oh, you know, it's a swamp gas phenomenon. And I think it's important that you consider all options. But what was interesting about that is I clearly saw 3 things moving around and dancing around very sharply, and they were bright. And it was exciting to see. It was exciting, you know, whatever it is.
That's 2. There's 1. Oh, wow. Yeah, there's 2, definitely.
Did you hear that?
What did you hear?
That way.
Yeah, I heard a whistle.
Whistle?
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm going to try whistling then. I'm going to try whistling.
Do you want me to?
Oh my god, I do see what you're looking at.
Do
you see?
Want me to turn the camera off?
No, you're good. No, just good.
Because I was filming it.
I just couldn't see.
But that's all 2 of them, just a minute. Can you make yourself brighter?
What's that?
Yeah.
Did you hear that noise?
Oh, I've been hearing noises. But
There's 2. There's 2 again?
Yeah.
There's 2 again.
They're not real close. But they
No, they're far enough from. They came in a little bit nearer, but they're staying far away from us now.
Yeah, they're staying what, about 30 yards away?
Yeah, they're far away.
Something like that.
I thought they were
oh, whoa!
right up to us.
Wow, I got it.
You got it?
Oh gosh.
Okay. Good.
Oh yeah.
Good job, Janice.
And now it's gone again.
This is great, man.
Since our field investigations are over, we wanted a historical perspective of what we had experienced. Joining us on a conference call is Dr. Robert Alley, a retired professor of anatomy and physiology, and David Reagan, a paranormal investigator and Cherokee folklorist.
One of the most fascinating things about our investigation occurred when we were in the Happy Valley area, right next to the Smoky Mountains National Park. And there, for want of a better word, and I'm struggling to describe it, there was an amorphous blob-like creature in the air which seems to float and almost, and maybe it did show some kind of intelligence. And that really got us to thinking. It was shocking. Now, David, are there any stories in the Cherokee legends about such a creature existing?
You know, that the area that you was in, there are stories in that area. And I'm going to preface this by saying that I will say the Cherokee name for it once, because in the Cherokee tongue, it's almost the same as invoking the Grim Reaper. And they think that by saying its name, you invoke it and invite it to come to you. And so we won't, bring that upon ourselves to bring the Grim Reaper to us. But it's Kalanu Akuliski, right? And that is the Cherokee name for what it is that we're about to talk about. And that is the Raven Mocker. Now, the Raven Mocker itself is something that they describe as being both physical but non, right? So it is a bad spirit, or it could also be a witch doctor, or medicine man or woman, right? Because it could take on either form as a man or a woman during the daytime. Now, what this thing does is it will take on the shape of a fireball almost. It has no real flight pattern to it. It doesn't fly like a bird or anything like that. But it will take on this fiery pattern of just erratic movements. And what it does is it's searching for its next victim. So it goes in, and people who are dying, so they'll usually be on the outskirts of big towns somewhere or something like that. And when someone's dying, they will go in and consume the last of their life left, leaving them to live longer lives. And so these things can live for, hundreds and thousands of years.
David, so what you're saying is that these things are essentially vampires, energy vampires, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. And, the Cherokee revere these things because even witches, as they are called sometimes, these are on the hierarchy. These are the worst of the worst. And even regular witches are afraid of these things.
One of the things that we found that was quite striking during our investigation was the fact that we saw orbs, sometimes on different colored orbs. And we were wondering if the Cherokee are familiar or know any legends of orbs mysteriously appearing in the woods and what they might be or what they might mean.
What is an orb? Besides being a globe, a globular form of light, it's clearly differentiated from phenomena such as St. Elmo's fire and static electricity. And of course, during World War II, even just as globular forms of light, not having any particular shape, they were sometimes described by Allied pilots as Foo Fighters. So you have a broad scope when you're talking about orbs. You've got a lot of different platforms that already exist for the discussion. Native religions would take a spiritual view of this. And of course, demonology discusses that as well. So, the fact that you have an orb of maybe different colors with attributes ascribed to those colors, such as healing or knowledge or, a warrior spirit, all these things have been ascribed to orbs as well as to other entities.
Dr. Alley, you had mentioned that the early indigenous peoples would have taken a religious view of orbs. Do you know of any ceremonies or acknowledgments associated with orbs or luminous phenomena?
Well, to start off, there were worldwide ethnographic oral traditions of lights associated with unusual phenomena. I think that one particular North American episode that deals with orbs in native oral tradition is that of the shaking tent, Cree, Algonquin, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Ojibwe, if you will. These Algonquin groups have had a ceremony that is not completely gone from history. It still exists, where a tent is set up and an individual of the tribal group who you would call a shaman or a medicine man has particular mediumship to a tent set up in a very particular way. It's a tall cylinder, actually, and during the interaction between energies, the tent starts to shake, and witnesses describe lights, orbs appearing around the top of the tent, sometimes in the tent, moving sometimes, and apparently these are spiritual entities, okay, that are not necessarily those of the dead or those passed on, but are spiritual entities of some sort that that don't flicker like fireflies or anything, but actually have an energy and move about, much as orbs are often described in modern reports, where the the orb and may even go through a wall, enter a building, and apparently move with intelligence.
Now, David, in the Smokies, there are many legends about feral people or tribes that somehow exist outside of modern day society. Do the Cherokee have any stories and legends about them that you could share with us that you think will help with our investigation?
In the Native American, the way that the Native Americans talk about the Bigfoot and stuff, right? These creatures existed in both worlds, and they always told their little kids and stuff like that to be wary of these things because they kidnapped women and children, that they would take them and they would never be seen of again. And what if these feral people that people are seeing and engaging in and encountering in the wild were to be these kids that were kidnapped by these beings?
Now that is an interesting theory. In the Dennis Martin case, it just doesn't make sense that not a trace of him was ever found. Now, this is a piece of a puzzle that could explain why some people go missing without a trace and the origins of the feral people.
Like you were saying a second ago, I think that fits this puzzle of who these feral people just may be.
When I was in Alaska, the second time I was filming in Port Chatham, and as part of filming, what you do is you do a master interview. Now, Port Chatham is the place where in the 1950s, the town was allegedly abandoned because a Bigfoot had run around killing people. That was the story. So we went to investigate that. Myself, Stephen Major and Larry Beans Baxter. Now, Stephen Major had his interview first, and it was in a little hut. And there's nobody around, there's nothing. There's no people for many, many miles. And he said he thought he'd seen something weird outside of the hut, and it had made him feel uncomfortable. So he hands me, at the end of the interview, Stephen Major hands me the shotgun. And I looked out of the window, and something really weird, it was like I couldn't even process it properly. It looked like there was some sort of strange, amorphous shape in the bushes, but it was distinctive enough for me to raise the shotgun up at it, and I was going to shoot it. It's one of the few places where we're in the world at that particular time. I felt like it was presenting a danger to us. It's obviously not people. There are no people around. And the moment I rose the shotgun up, ready to fire, the bushes moved back and it disappeared. And after we got back, Stephen wasn't very well for a long while, but it interested me. I looked up stories about, could this potentially be something, some sort of creature? And there are legends that things could hunt people and animals, this strange creature. Now, when Greg showed me that footage, I was absolutely astounded. That isn't an error in light. That isn't some sort of photographic error. Greg has very, very carefully been through this footage, and this thing exists. It exists. What if the strangest and yet most terrifying thing about the Smokies is that this creature exists and we don't track it because we don't know about it, and that's its greatest strength? What if there are things in the Smokies we are only just beginning to comprehend, and to comprehend as a result of this film?
Well, Dr. Alley, David, I want to thank you both for joining us and helping us out with our investigations. You guys have contributed enormously, and we can't thank you enough.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you, Greg.
So, Natalie, I think we've been doing the investigation for nearly a week or so now, and I know you've got to go back.
Yeah.
So I think it's time that we really had a look at some of the evidence
Yeah.
as it was presented. Is that all right by you?
That's great. Yeah.
So let's look at the evidence first of all, the more anecdotal evidence, and that was presented by, you interviewed that guy, was it South Force?
South Force, yes.
Yeah, South Force. And for me, although I wasn't there, it seems to me that the idea that the government had those killing squads out for supposedly feral people, that seems a big leap for me.
Okay.
Now, I don't mind you giving a different opinion,
Yeah.
but you spoke to him, so what do you think?
So I spoke to him, and he seemed very credible. I grew up in Appalachia, out of West Virginia, and it was very well known that there are feral people. I know that a lot of folks in Appalachia in between the 30s and the 60s were quite poor. So to have a large amount of cash to do something for the government was very enticing. So I think as the story went down generations, there could have been some misinformation, but I think there is some truth to what he was saying.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm with you on the feral people point. I think there's certainly been enough evidence to suggest that. But I would be extremely cautious myself. And there's no right and wrong about this, but I don't tend to believe that the government had death squads out for feral people. I think that would have come out.
That's right.
But that's totally fine. Now, what about the anecdotal evidence? I thought that was quite interesting, that the locals talked about the figures with hoods, and also that there is a history, as you've just said, of feral people in the Appalachians.
Yes, so the people with hoods, there could be small groups out there that are just, it could be a group of teenagers or just some folks out. I don't think there's too much to that. I think it's just an isolated cult.
Okay, points well made. Let's have a look then, like if we look to that sort of anecdotal evidence and the research, let's have a look, turn our minds to our investigations in the evenings.
Yes.
And because there were some of them I felt were truly gripping.
Oh, yes.
So let's look at Cades Cove first of all. So we went to those two churches where there has been some alleged activity, and you got results on both the recordings. How do you feel about that?
That was pretty interesting. The first church that we went to, the Methodist church, I was asking questions, and after one of the questions, it sounded like a child's voice. I couldn't make out what the child was saying. And then the second church, the Baptist church, that had a different feeling. There was more of a heavier feeling in that one corner that we went to.
Yes.
And so I started asking questions, and my eyes immediately were drawn to the drawings, people writing on the walls. And I just had this feeling of how disrespectful that was. And that's when I asked the question, and we got that solid knock. What do you think about people writing on the walls? Do you appreciate that, or do you feel that that's disrespectful? That they feel that it was very disrespectful. So I got that feeling.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair comment. There was no children around when we were there, and there was certainly nobody knocking on that wall. And I've been to those churches on at least, 10 occasions in the last couple of years, and I always felt that corner had a certain vibe about it. Nothing more tangible than that, but it certainly had a vibe.
It did.
And I was pleased with those. I think they were good results.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's have a look at, for me, the centerpiece. It's been a real privilege to take you out to some of the areas where there's been alleged Bigfoot and or feral people activity.
Yes.
What strikes you as some of the more poignant things about that?
So the overall feeling that first night that we went out, where I got that overwhelming feeling, that sense of dread, that there was a sense of that predator and prey feeling where I felt so heavy. And then we started seeing orbs. And then the other night that we went out deep into the forest and we heard those metal knocks.
What was it? Was that metal? It's closer.
And the orbs were all around us. And it was a really incredible feeling as they were moving in, and then it just went right back out. It's like they were checking us out to see who we were, and when they felt that we weren't a threat, they moved back out.
Yeah, I think those are points well made. I think as well for me, there was that strange metallic clanging. There was nothing metal. It's the middle of the night. The nearest buildings of any kind are about 1.5 miles away.
Yeah.
There's no reason for any people to be out there. And why would they just go and clang these metal things?
Yeah.
It was
very strange because the first metal clang knock that we got, it was 3. And I thought, well, maybe there's a gate out there, and I didn't really think anything of it. But when it happened 2 additional times and it was getting closer and closer, that's when I knew it wasn't a metal fence or a chain link fence or anything like that closing.
It was very strange.
It's very bizarre.
Now, let's have a look at, bringing in this. I want to sort of break it down. So we've looked at 2 of the most famous cases here. The Mike Hearon, the 2008 case, and 1960s case of Dennis Martin. And I just want to introduce that remote viewing evidence, because we obviously, Greg did that with the remote viewers and what their information was as well. So let's talk about Mike Hearon. You've seen the evidence that you analysed before you got here. You've seen the evidence that was presented while you were here. What's your view now of the Mike Hearon case?
I just think he may have just come across, it was just foul play. I don't really know. It's still undetermined, very much, because there's not any additional solid evidence. I just can't see him just disappearing like that in the way that his ATV was arranged and how it was. It just seemed like it was very an abrupt ending.
Yeah, and I think, for me, I think we don't know. But I also think that the way he pursued something, particularly on the ATV, and he left all these things behind, I feel like he saw something. I don't know what.
Yeah.
But I think that whatever he saw got him and took him.
Yeah.
I can't give you any sort of truly persuasive evidence.
Right.
But that's my instinctual feeling after researching that here.
Yes.
So I think we're still undecided about him.
Right.
But how about Dennis Martin? Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I think he was trafficked. I think he was abducted and trafficked, but I truly believe that it was by somebody that he knew, whether it be a family member or someone else. That family took the exact same trip at the exact same time of the year and took the same route every single time. And if somebody wanted to abduct him and not be found, they could have done it at that time. If it was a bear or a feral person, there's enough brush and foliage that there would have been a lot of sound made with Dennis Martin trying to struggle to get away. I just think he was abducted and trafficked.
And I think, if we bring in the remote viewer evidence, okay, so remote viewing is not a proven science, not by any means, but it has been used by a number of intelligence agencies in the past, most notably the CIA. The Russians also used them. And what I thought was interesting was that the 2 that Greg got, both of them, Tilly and Jessica Jones, both of them came up with the conclusion that he was indeed trafficked. They say a slightly different way. Both of them talked about a creek and an old cabin nearby. And the information I think that you got from the FBI files, to add to your points, indicated an eyewitness seeing what looked like somebody taking the child away.
They had him over their shoulder and they identified the red shirt.
So, I mean, obviously we're not going to prove this to a level that would be worthy of a criminal conviction. We haven't got we haven't got somebody, the person who did it, for example. But I'm quite happy to conclude that Dennis Martin was trafficked based on the evidence. I feel confident enough to do that. But I'm not sure how. I think your theory is interesting. It might be somebody who knew him. It could still potentially be some sort of feral person. But I think either way, he was snatched by somebody and trafficked. I think that's a reasonable conclusion to make based on the evidence that we presented. So I'm in agreement with you. I really want to thank you for coming.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
It's been such a pleasure to have you here and bring your skills and knowledge to this research. I feel that you made a lot of progress with the Dennis Martin, and I look forward to seeing you again. More adventures.
I agree. I can't wait. Thank you.
Cheers, Natalie.
Cheers.